helping us do some great economics as well as financial analysis on many of the related issues of the economy. Good morning to you, John Gachi. And then also we have Aduji Tamaklo. He is a legal practitioner, member of the NDC's legal team, and then a member of government's communication team, or the MPP's communication team, is right here. Saka Salia, long-standing communicator for the MPP. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Ola.
Okay. Always good to have you as well.
Thank you very much.
Now let's get that insight from Kwame Pieni. When we come back, we'll ask a question or two of Professor John Gachi of what is possible or not.
Look, the former president was talking as a politician, okay? He is spoken, let his counterparts, that is those running for the presidency from the MPP, respond to him. I am not going to respond to him. You know, a few people got into banking who should not have gotten into banking. They were not fit and proper individuals to go into banking. And they should not have been allowed because they are no different from armed robbers who come with a month to rob a bank. What they want is just get a banking license and take deposits from you and from me, and then use the deposits to build real estate for themselves and to finance their companies. Those type of people have to be weeded out. Those who were running serious businesses and thought politically their businesses were run for political reasons, I don't support that. If we can find that out, we should reverse it. Because look, it's good for Ghana that we have successful private entrepreneurs. The more entrepreneurs we have, the more millionaires we have, the better for this economy. And I think that all political parties should endorse and support the growth and development of entrepreneurs. If we don't, at least for those of us in the NPP, we believe in the Ghanaians being encouraged to develop and own property in Ghana instead of owning it elsewhere.
And that is Kwame Pieni. Now, we know that he's a big critic of Ken Ofori-Atta, as well as the governor of the Bank of Ghana and the way they've managed the monetary policy, fiscal policy as well. But for all the related subject, we foremostly have to ask the question of Aduji Tamaklo. Why former President John Dramani Mahama decided to make that promise? And, you know, we're seeing, well, some of these great economists also following through and saying whether it's possible or not. And it's a very sticky situation, is that not it, Aduji?
Okay, so once again, good morning to you. Good morning to my brother Saka Salia that I've been doing this communication with since 2014. Before then, happy birthday to one of your ardent viewers. He's in Bolga now, Duncan. Today happens to be his birthday. It's only fair I do that. Now that said, look, H. John Dramani Mahama, if you recall, in his acceptance speech in Tamale, make the point that with the benefit of power, one of the things that the NDC is going to do is, as practicable as he can, the banks that were, and he used this words carefully, unjustly had their banking license revoked, his government would ensure that those licenses were restored. He provided a parameter, and it is doable.
Which is what?
The parameter is those that were unjustly.
What's the meaning of that?
Now, when you say unjustly, for instance, it has been stated clearly. If you look at the letter from BOG announcing the revocation of the banking license, for instance, of Heritage Bank, clearly, the reasons given by the Bank of Ghana are completely untenable.
Why not?
I say untenable because, you see, one of the governing principles of our 1992 Constitution, particularly Article 19 on fair trial, is the fact that a man is presumed innocent until his guilt is established beyond reasonable doubt. This hallowed principle of law had received judicial affirmation, confirmation, and what have you. And so, where the governor, together with his board, say that we are having to revoke the banking license of a particular company on suspicion, clearly, you will see that it is a reason that has other underlying factors. Because we do know that multitude of suspicion has never been evidenced in this country. Because we all have suspicion about each other. But there is a furrow. When you suspect wrongdoing, you put the person before the courts of this country. At the time that the banking license was revoked, Alhaji Seydou Agongo was before the courts of our country undergoing criminal prosecution. Has he been found guilty? Now you see, the manner in which the governor acted recklessly in the revocation of the banking license of Seydou Heritage Bank gives an indication how the Republic had even proceeded with the prosecution of Seydou Agongo. Do you know what? You see, where you have a situation where you have taken an action prior to a determination of the person's guilt, then at all costs, you must ensure that the person is found guilty.
And here the accusation of guilt is which one?
In order to provide a justification for your prior action, ordinarily you would have waited. The person is found or convicted. Hold on, I beg you, so I don't lose my thought.
No.
You see,
these are public matters of record, right? And we're told by the Bank of Ghana in a full statement that Heritage Bank and its main shareholder had involved himself in fraudulent contract, was using so-called post-dated payments of those undertakings with the government entity as part of the capitalization. That supposedly was supposed to have been met by Heritage Bank.
That is correct.
Yes, true.
So
what's wrong with that?
No, the point I'm making
and the Bank of Ghana is enclosed by its act to do that.
No. The Bank of Ghana, per the act, okay, can make certain determination. But in this country, the only person that has the mandate to make a determination as to what constitutes fraud, because you see, even in a civil matter, when you even allege fraudulent conduct, the proof has always been proved beyond reasonable doubt. The Bank of Ghana had not put Seydou Agongo before any of our courts and made any material allegation of fraud against him.
That's true.
A determination having been made by our courts that this conduct is actually fraudulent, and so that on the basis of that determination, we are revoking banking license so procured by you. No such thing was done. And so the point I'm making is that where you take a decision prior to a determination by a court, you will now be forced to put your narrative to fit the prior determination. So I want to ask, is that what informed the manner in which the retired High Court judge, my Lord Justice Onyenuga, was that the reason why he was proceeding in that manner with the Seydou Agongo trial? Because we saw in a very novel situation where, for instance, lawyers for Dr. Opuni, lawyers for Dr. Opuni during the trial were able to, as it were, put in evidence 14 pieces of documentary evidence. He, the judge, now on retirement, asked the prosecution, do you have any objection to these documents that the accused person is, as it were, tendering through the prosecution witnesses? The prosecution in court, recorded by him, the judge, said, my Lord, we have no objection. On that basis, he then admitted those documents in evidence. The accused person, after the prosecution closed their case, said, look, on the basis of all these documents that we have put in, we want to do a submission of no case. Now, Honyenuga, at home, when he had to write his ruling on the submission of no case, now says that even document that he himself admitted without objection from the accused persons, right? He is expunging them from the record because, according to them, they offend the hearsay rule. Novel. Completely novel. Now, the point
Why is it novel?
Because you don't do that. At the point where the evidence is being offered, you ask the prosecution, because it's adversarial, you ask the prosecution, do you have any objection? They say no. The point I want to make is that where, for instance, in this case, the governor of the Bank of Ghana has taken a decision against the interests of Seydou Agongo, based on suspicion among others, and you have the way the state was going on this trial, it creates the perception that you at all costs wanted conviction, which will give a post facto justification for the decision that you have taken prior. I am saying that in a democracy, and particularly persons who ascribe to the rule of law, we should not countenance this misconduct. Because when you do that, Governor Addison, tomorrow, when Akufo-Addo is no longer there and he's on retirement, right? If I, assuming for whatever argument, you bring criminal charges against him, and you say, in and of itself, should be a basis of which you want to deprive him of a house that he had built, would you be fair to him?
Well, that's a question for the courts. Now, Sakab, when the former president made this, now we've had this reaction from Kwame Pieni, who says that if there are efforts made and after great inquiries, it's found out that there'd been any other ulterior motive other than the intent of perhaps non-functionality or abuse of their right as shareholders for which the banks were collapsed, they should be returned by way of their licenses to the owners. How is it ringing on the corridors of power?
Yeah, well, thank you very much. Let me take this opportunity to say good morning to our channel viewers and my good friend, Eduji Temeku. First of all, let it be clear to all that the NPP did not close those banks. Those banks, in and themselves, had collapsed long before the NPP came to power. The NDC, they are aware.
If you say collapse, what do you mean?
I will explain to you. The NDC is aware of that. But you see, because of politics, political, parochial interests, Edoji today is now sitting down and telling us that, oh, John Dramani Mahama was talking about those that were unfairly collapsed. Unjustly collapsed. So he's now modifying what John Dramani Mahama said.
No.
They will continue modifying.
That's in the statement.
Yeah, I'm coming.
Please allow me.
We have seen all these things. The same people, when they came, when in 2012, John Dramani Mahama implemented the ban on Okada in this country. I'm coming, I'm making a point.
You mean he implemented?
Through.
I thought the National Road Safety Commission.
It was under his regime.
It was an interpretation of,
I am saying that
the LI.
It was under his regime.
2180. That's the road traffic regulation.
It was under his regime that they actually, outlaw Okada in this country. But because they wanted votes, and they have seen the increase in the number of Okada riders, and in order to fetch that vote, in 2020, he came and said that, oh, we are going to legalize Okada and all that. The same thing. In 2015, the NDC, who are talking from both sides of the map, actually implemented the asset quality review. No, they instituted the asset quality review. And after the institution of, after they had done it, they came out and said that about 8 or 9 banks were in distress. And in 2016, they came out with the Bank and Specialized Deposit Act 930.
For the purposes of?
For the purposes of all that. To ensure that when we have such situation, what do we do? Do we take over Do we let an administrator take over and all that? If you look at Section 6(2), also talk about in the specialized bank and specialized deposit act, they talk about the obligor limits.
Yes.
That banks should not be exposed through, lending to one person and all that. We have seen the brother of the president who owe a single bank and the bank collapsed. We've seen all that. So I am saying that if you want to do politics all the time and talk from both sides of the mouth, we can continue doing that. Okay. But the reality is that no government will just come and say, "Oh, let me collapse banks. Let me let people go." Look, in Britain, in Nigeria, in other jurisdictions, they have all gone through some of these reforms of the banks. You see, the financial sector is not how many banks that you have.
Then what is it about?
It's about how many banks that can function.
Okay. So do I get the feeling or a supposition from what you're saying that there was a perception because the banks were many and in distress?
No, the
objective was to reduce the numbers.
No, that is not what I'm saying.
Then what are you saying?
You see, that is the reason why not all banks were affected in the action of the Bank of Ghana.
Okay.
Indeed, you remember in 2015 when even John Dramani Mahama himself went to the State of the Nation's address, he blamed the Bank of Ghana for some of the inspectorate division. For some of the things that they do, I mean, by sleeping on their jobs and all those things. We have seen all these things. But what I'm trying to say is that if you look at the banks and the intervention that the MPP government, through the Bank of Ghana, actually came out with, it led to about saving of 1.2 million depositors. Let me tell you, in 2015...
Savings of what?
Depositors.
They are deposits.
They are deposits, yeah. The 1.2 million deposited savings. Because, look, in 2015, somebody gave me a check of 5,000 Ghana cedis to one of the Papa Kosi Indon's bank. The check is still in the house.
You mean you couldn't be paid in 2015?
No.
That cannot be true.
I'm telling you,
because I was a customer of GM Bank.
Oh, I'm telling you. You go here, they tell you, go to the head of office. You go to the head office.
That cannot be true.
I'm telling you what happened. But you see, whatever it is, I mean, you've
withdrawn.
Whatever
you've withdrawn this communication.
Okay, whatever.
Because I was a customer.
No problem. Okay. Whatever you, I mean, but the good people who are listening to me,
no money in the
good people of Ghana who are listening to me understand what I'm saying. I'm saying that a lot of the banks, almost all those banks that are...
They were in distress.
Look, John Dramani Mahama, the NDC government, came out to say that, they are going to revive some of the banks. After the asset quality review, what did they do? They gave money to some of those banks. And when they gave the money to those banks, what did the banks do with the money? Some of them at the board level actually shared the money like what do you call it, granules, and chop. And then the new government comes and you say that, the new government should continue giving the money to those directors. Now, as I'm speaking, some of the directors are in court. Some are paying those monies. So there is nothing.
But that is what Kwame PNM has said, that for those that were collapsed, in all truism, because effectively the shareholders were said to have misapplied deposited funds, or also as far as their fiduciary responsibilities are said to have breached them, then of course the law should take its course.
The law definitely takes
Professor John Gachi, I know that this is not a conversation you're hearing for the first time, but let me ask you, when you heard the former president say what he said, and then also we've had subsequent reactions, now we have this on tape by economic professor or somebody who is an expert in the sector, Kwame PNM, very experienced as well. What did you make of it, or what do you make of it in relation to how the banks were said to have been taken into administration, or that decision also triggered?
Thank you. I believe it will give me some time to articulate the facts and the principles. Now, it is a fact that no bank collapsed in 2015, 2016. No bank in Ghana collapsed in 2015, 2016. What happened in 2015 was that the government realized that there were some problems in the banking sector.
Yes.
And they wanted to understand the scale, the scope, and what should be done. So they instituted the asset quality review. That review was done, and they identified some of the challenges and some of the banks which are hard hit by the asset review work. So having understood the scope of things, you need to profile solution. And one of the solutions was that the banking sector was clearly indebted, or the energy sector was indebted heavily to the banking sector. And you know, if an amount falls due for payment, within 90 days, the Bank of Ghana will ask for that particular portion of the loan to be crystallized into non-performing loan.
An NPL.
And the moment it is classified as a non-performing loan, you need to make what we call provision. And those provisions will be eaten into your capital. So that was the reason why the base of capital of so many of the Ghanaian banks were eroded. So they started by instituting the Energy Sector Levies Act, so that levy will accrue some money. And that money will now be paid, the contractors pay the banks directly, and then the non-performing loan issue will be going down, and then they will be recovering. That was one of the solutions.
Yeah.
Now, the second one was that the act in place at that time was not potent enough. So they needed a new act supported by the World Bank and IMF. In fact, in particular, it was led by IFC. I think the private sector arm of the World Bank also was the one that led it. And then took all of us through what the banking act was to do for the banking sector. So, and anytime a law of that nature, a reform, that drastic legal reform is made, you needed to take the people through the process. And the people were being taken through the process from September 2016. So the act was to be rolled out January 2017. Now, what happened was, at that time, they sacked all the chief executive and the banks that the capital will be increased from 120 to 290. Now, as to what happened, that the amount moved from 290 to 400 is something that we need to question. So if you are finding it difficult to raise 290, and then all of a sudden you are called upon to make a capital requirement of 400 million, definitely that is the beginning of the problem. So the point I'm making is that, yes, asset review was conducted. For what reason? To resolve the problem. And problems were identified, and various solutions were profiled to be able to deal with the problem. Now, there are certain principles that we need to appreciate.
Okay.
The point is that the banks, as established, are having rights. That's why they can sue and be sued.
Yes.
So if you take a decision against a bank and it is clear that it is unfair, we need to reverse those decisions. Whether you are going to pay compensation or you are going to restore licenses, there are things that ought to be done.
All right.
I keep saying that if we take away the right of a person, and then through the legal process we realize that we are wrong, what do? We restore the person's right. So it's as simple as that. As I heard some people talk about cost, there is no cost enough to correct the wrong that we have done to a citizen of a country.
All right, let me come in.
No cost.
Let me come in. I'm reading this from Dr. Pakwese Indum, and he has his case in court as well, his banking court. And he says that there were efforts to save some banks through a special purpose vehicle. Why is it that the GM Bank that has been built for the people, taking great risk in being managed all through the years, was not added to some of those banks that also could be supported? There is supposed to be fairness for every investor who takes risks in the banking sector. Why do we have all these unjustifiably be made as decisions? What do you make of this? Conclude on this and then comment on this.
Yes, I'm coming to all that.
Okay.
So there should be a principle, and the principle is how impactful a bank is. So if, for example, the people, the directors and co, who are supposed to act in the best interest of the bank did not act in the best interest in the bank, your job is to prosecute those directors and protect the bank. Your job is not to prosecute those directors and kill the bank. That's not what it means. Now, if you take the impact of GM Bank, for example, it is not in doubt. Now, I can mention a district in the Volta region which doesn't have any commercial bank. The only bank that district has is GM Bank. Now it's taken away. They are locked out from banking experience. They don't have any bank up to today. So the impact is very clear. So if you feel that people are sharing, directors are sharing money that have been given to them, in any case, that money is not a free gift. That money, we call it liquidity support. It was given to those banks at the rate of policy rate. So it is not true that money were given to the people. It's not, no, that's not the case. It's money they borrow from the central bank to do their work.
Okay.
So if we find out that those directors share the money, we need to deal with those directors and save the bank.
All right.
So that is the principle.
Okay. Prof.
And we have examples. We're able to save 5 Ghanaian banks. What makes those other Ghanaian banks not to qualify for the protection that the Bank of Ghana gave them? They all qualify.
Yeah, yeah.
So that is the basis.
I remember the night before the last decision will be made, for which we had the GM Bank, etc. There was some high-level meetings, etc., and a lot of things were said in that meeting as well. It brought to a head the decision that was supposed to have been made. If you take that decision, the other side of the political divide, that is the government in power, argues through its communicators and assigns and even the finance minister that you either take your route, or you also go the way the Bank of Ghana did, of course, with the support of the finance ministry, etc. Right? It's either you take one or you take two. So so the argument is that it doesn't make it wrong.
No, I don't get you.
Okay.
The point I'm making is that there is an established principles in dealing with these matters.
Yes.
We have banking crisis in Sweden. We have banking crisis in the US. We have banking crisis elsewhere. The point is that those principles must be articulated clearly. You can use what we call rule-based to do anything against the banks. You believe that the rules say A, B, C, D. But there is also principle-based approach to bank regulation management. And that is what we didn't use. And that is what is creating the problem we have today. Now, we have many citizens who are complaining about the banking sector cleanup. Now, those people might be given opportunity to vent their frustration, their experiences. I heard that all people were paid and the rest. Look, that is not the case. There are institutions who have in excess of 130 million. They have not been paid. We don't want to be talking about those things now.
Okay.
So please, let us be fair to ourselves. I'm not sure it is only MPP who benefit from banks, or it is only NDC who benefit from the bank. It is the economy.
Okay.
So that is what we are discussing.
Yeah, that's the underlying factor. So Eduji, the point is there's a decision to be made we're told that there needs to be some level of equity, some level of fairness. But at the end of the day, how do you make a promise that you possibly could restore licenses to shareholders?
Yes, so you see, like I made a point, and I've said it on this platform, that one of the most foolish decisions taken in the name of the state is the decision by Governor Addison and his other people to destroy banks.
What would in the
Please, in the name of banking sector cleanup. And I've always cited the example that even if they were not wise, a simple reading of the Bible will tell them how King Solomon proceeded when the two women had an issue about the child. What was King Solomon's approach? He said, don't kill the child. One woman was insisting, kill the child. King Solomon said, no. Allow the child to grow. The child will become useful to the entire society. As for the foolish woman, she said, kill the child, now and now. You see, Prof. Gachi made a very important intervention. You see, you go for models that have worked before. When President Obama took over as president of the U.S., there was the financial crisis, you recall.
The recession that even affected everyone.
The supply mortgage issues. AIG,
Fannie Mae,
American International Group, one of the biggest insurance companies in the world. Many other banks, Fannie Mae, Merrill Lynch, all those banks. President Obama, if he was foolish, would have taken a decision that let's kill these banks. Not only the banks, because there was a ripple effect on the automobile industry as well. Ford, General Motors, and the rest. These are companies that are over 100 years old, the backbone of the U.S. economy. What did he do? He said, instead of killing, we'll give them a bailout. And then dilute the shareholding. Which option we had? And so, for instance, if you are not treating your children well, the state does not go to kill your children. The state can isolate you, the parent, punish you for neglect, but does not kill the child. But in this case, the foolish state decided to kill the children for the negligence of their father.
Which are the shareholders.
Which are, yes, the father here being the shareholder. You can isolate them, dilute the shareholding structure, and keep them flow. Because the reason is this. The banks not only, right, create employment, pay taxes, and among other things, but they are also a source of stability, financial stability. Look, we have struggled to get our people to participate in banking over this period. Now, by the reckless conduct of Governor Addison and his cohorts, right, you have a situation where today people fear to put their monies in the banks because they don't know when next you have another reckless governor proceeding in this manner. Our friends in the NPP tell us that, oh, they've used 25 billion, still counting, to solve a 9 billion problem. My brother Saka here, I know he's very wise. He will not, if faced with a 9 billion problem, use 25 billion to solve a 9 billion problem. Saka won't do that.
That's a supposition. He's
not. I told you that.
He's not a finance advisor to government or to any government.
But he's managed his personal finances. I'm saying that
it's not the same. They are not coterminous.
No, but you see, if Saka has a 9 billion problem, Saka will not come back to his shareholders, which are Ghanaians, and say that he's used 25 billion to solve the 9 billion problem. That's foolishness.
And Saka, there's a key consideration that if you look at what the critics or the skeptical people, the skeptics were saying is that if you take some banks, for example, like you take GM Bank, well, you can accuse the shareholder or the shareholders and the directors for misusing or misapplying all the funds of depositors or some funds of depositors or even some of that liquidity support that they had. At the end of the day, there has to be a supreme interest of states and patriotism in decision making, even though those decisions could be right or wrong in some spheres. What do you make of it? For example, you say you come from WA or something. You're driving along those corridors to WA, and you see those almost left to ruins buildings of GN Bank serving, or ideally would have served those. What do you feel as, even though you communicate for government, but as a citizen and somebody who is a customer of a bank?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that we live in a state of laws. And when the law is explicit, when the law says A, B, C, and D, some people say that, oh, leave the law and go and look at something else. Meanwhile, the law was just passed not long ago. It's not as if this is absolute law. This is a law that Professor Gachi was telling us was to be implemented in 2017. And it means that they have taken into consideration the contemporary issues, contemporary problems. So the law was not anywhere near absolute. And therefore, the government was doggedly implementing the law. Let me tell you, it was not all the banks that were affected in this. In the Act, the Banking and Specialized Deposits Act, some of the banks went into administration. Others were asked not to function anymore. Others were consolidated. So, depending on the issues, then a different solution was preferred for those banks. So you cannot tell me the problem of Unibank was the same as what's the name? The Power Indum Bank, the first national bank.
But they all were collapsed ultimately.
No. But what I'm saying is that the problems, I mean, in terms of dimensions, were different, and therefore the Act itself stipulates how you have to go about it, and that was the reason why, if you look at it holistically,
Mr. Sakasale,
yes,
is it not true that nobody has said that taking those banks into administration entirely was the same, or that they face the same problem, or the neglect of the fiduciary responsibility by these directors and shareholders were one and the same and affected the banks the same, right?
Yeah, I mean,
okay.
Yeah, so
it makes unjustifiable your
holistic
description.
What I'm saying is that some people said banks were collapsed, and therefore, once those banks were collapsed, government is responsible for those things. And I'm saying that, you see, when I said that no bank collapsed under the NPP, people should understand.
Right.
Those banks before, those banks before 2017, like I said, had collapsed before.
All right.
They had collapsed and they were in complete comatose.
All right.
These are known by the players. They themselves know. But because of politics, people, and for instance, I mean, John Dramani Mahama is telling us that when he comes, if the banks qualify to be reinstalled, and even now, if a bank that was more or less collapsed, qualified.
But you didn't answer my question.
No, because I didn't actually understand your question.
Okay. So I'm saying that beyond you defending government,
yes,
you look at those structures, those buildings by the defunct GN Bank while going to your community in WA.
Yes.
What do you feel?
Well, I mean, it depends on the individual. You see?
I'm depending on you.
Yes.
Give me your response.
Yeah, I mean, I would have done what the government did.
All right, thank you.
Let me explain.
No, don't explain. Please.
Okay.
Professor John Gachi,
the Bank of Ghana, sorry.
The government of Ghana, the finance ministry, seems to have a big justification for why the Bank of Ghana took the decision. They said law is law. Now, what remedies are there to make sure that a government of Ghana, other than the Nana Addo government, to make efforts to do good or right by banks or shareholders who feel that their licenses were unduly or unjustifiably taken away? Professor John Gachi, okay.
Whether the law itself was bad law.
Yes. No, it's
if the law is bad law, then you can.
Okay, Prof, did you hear my question?
Yes, please.
Okay, please answer me.
Well, we are not actually in the school of jurisprudential thoughts, where somebody will put forward that he's a positivist, therefore he's reading the law on the face, and this is what the law says.
Yeah.
We are dealing with a banking sector which is very sensitive to the economy and to everybody. So when we are acting in that space, we need to be circumspect about what we are doing.
Okay.
But the fact remains that anytime you are dealing with these issues, we need to bear in mind that regulatory action can cause a collapse of a bank. A bank being in distress does not mean that that bank has collapsed. It means that some attention ought to be paid to that bank. So if a bank is in distress before you come, it does not mean that the bank has collapsed. So that point must be made clearly. Then again, if the reason why capital was eroded is as a result of you not paying some loans, and those loans were crystallized into non-performing loan, and provisions were made and undercut the strength of the capital, then it means if you intentionally refuse to pay loans to contractors and to the banks, that is a direct way of contributing to the process. So all these things have to be investigated. Look, there are people who are not talking. There are people who are waiting for a change before they can talk. There are some people who are talking. People say they are not fair to them. We have heard Amoabe. He said they are not fair to him.
Yes.
We have heard Pakwesi Ndu, they are not fair to him. Others are quiet. People have lost their lives. People have lost their livelihood. You know, all this is a huge infliction of trouble, disaster on people. We had in this time before, in this country before, that people say that the coups that were conducted affected them negatively. The state gave them chance, reconciliation. They came to vent their experiences. Those that the state considered that they have been unfairly treated, they compensated them. Some people's properties were seized. They reverted the properties to them. So are you trying to say that we cannot do the same thing under the banking sector cleanup? That ought to be done. Number one, to send a signal to the country that the country is ready to protect its citizens. That must be done to give signal to politicians that you cannot arbitrarily use political power to collapse businesses.
Yes.
Of course, we are not saying that when the test is posted, or if a platform is provided, we are not saying that definitely every bank that was collapsed will pass the test. That's not what we are saying. We are saying that if the test or the platform is provided, those banks that are found to be unfairly treated, the state must find a way to treat them well.
Okay. Now, per your assessment, and by the way, Professor John Gachi is also a lawyer. So all of us will have to put the matters into perspective. It's not as if people are speaking in vacuum. And then also my good friend here is also a law student, so he helps all of us to put the matters into perspective. Based on your assessment, not only assessing by yourself, observational surveys, having oral testimonies of people, this banking collapse that we undertook, how has it affected the financial sector since then, and then either warded away or perhaps created a certain sense of fear among citizens in relation to relating with financial instruments or banks? Professor John Gachi, is your question?
Is it to me?
Yes. Just shortly.
Is the question to me?
Yes.
Highlight the last part of the question, please.
Based on your own assessment, how has that banking sector collapse that we undertook affected the financial sector, and then also created a certain phobia for the Ghanaian public in terms of how they need to relate to banks, especially?
Yes, I think it puts fear in people. Entrepreneurs see it to be very risky operating in the banking sector, especially when they realize that they were not fairly treated. But with time, things became somehow normalized, but the experiences are within the people. So those are the things we're talking about. It brings a lot of disruptions. It affected the real sector because some people have a good relation with those banks. Those banks know them very well. They lend to them and they shape them. They help them to nurture their businesses. That was not the case for all of them. So it brought a lot of disruption, and in fact, it affected the employment situation in the country. Perhaps it's also contributed to the level of the unemployment that we have in the country. So we cannot shy away from the negative effect from the banking sector cleanup. Of course, they will announce to us some positive results. But I can tell you, the nature of the NPL, that the non-performing loans situation, from the time that the banking sector cleanup was done up to today, there is no market difference in the NPL.
Still the same.
There's no market difference in the ability of the banks.
Okay, so are you saying that if we were to look at the banks we have currently, let's say this year, we look at an assessment of the banks from the 2022 financial year, a lot of the banks will go down under based on that decision and same criteria of making those decisions?
We all read the financial statement.
Yes, I did.
Before DDEP and after DDEP.
Exactly.
So we know what is happening in the landscape. I think we need to make the banks more robust. We need to make the banks more sound. We need to make the banks more stable. And then we need to increase the capacity of the banks to be able to take on all sectors of the economy to finance. I think that is the agenda we want to achieve within the banking space. So whatever we need to do to achieve that, we need to do that. But I'm not sure the way the banking sector cleanup was conducted actually yielded that result. All
right. Just 2 minutes each for you, then we'll move on to Aseng, and then we can say goodbye to Prof as well. And thank you for telling Saka that what you know about GM Bank. Okay, so that's from Sampi Yale, who says that Professor Gachie has given the best explanation of the banking sector cleanup so far. Now, what remedies are available for these shareholders?
Yeah, so
because Pianin says that.
So let's pick the classic case of Unibank. You see, Unibank, per its operation, targeted the small micro business.
The risky.
Good. So, for instance, a contractor that has gotten a government contract could have easily gone to Unibank for quick mobilization, advances, go to site, start some job. Because most of the Tier 1 banks, they are not comfortable. They want to look for collateral and others. You see, the likes of Unibank put up a scheme that allows them, just by looking at sometimes your contract itself, Government of Ghana assurances, among others, were willing. The likes of GM banks. So you notice that by the time they were collapsing GM Bank, the amount of money owed them by government contractors was huge. The same thing for UT Bank. The same for Unibank. Because you see, the typical, the typical bank always want to take the risk factor seriously. But these banks were willing to help Ghanaians. You know what? In finance, because of national security consideration, you'd always want to ensure greater participation of indigenes in capital formation. Because you see, when you have a lot of foreigners being the owners of your capital, it puts your country at risk. Because at any time, when they pull the plugs, the economy falls down. So all over the world, states always are trying to help their citizens to be part of capital formation for national security consideration. Because once you do that, what it does is that you provide stability for your financial sector. Because, like they will say, the Ghanaian, where would he take his money to? It would be in Ghana. But
Edwige, as far as we're related, it's not a moral issue, is it?
It's not an issue of morality.
So what's your point?
But you see, the law has an element. That is why we use the word justification. Justification means that you are using it within a certain parameters. So, for instance, if you look at the Constitution, Article 296, it uses words like capricious, whimsical, and others. These are human matters. So you can look the face of Saka and say, Saka, I don't like you because you are MPP. So I'm taking a decision. That decision may be grounded, quote-unquote, in law, but it's whimsical.
Right.
Because if you look at other considerations, you would have come to a different. May we never, in the history of this country, okay, have such reckless, wicked people handling the affairs of this country. What it does is that it destroys the livelihoods of people. It destroys employment, even taxation. Look at the number, how much taxes these banks pay.
But it's not a moral issue.
No, tax is not a moral issue. It's legal.
Roland,
yes.
I see.
Please conclude for me.
Yeah, in the light of what happened with DKM, God is Love, and all.
Do which are online.
I'm coming.
Just for the record, your online.
Yeah, I'm coming. In the light of all those things, and the fact that the NDC government gave money to certain banks, and then the banks misuse those monies and all that.
You mean the Bank of Ghana?
Yeah, the Bank of
the
Ghana.
600
the
million
Bank
that
of
was
Ghana.
advanced.
Yeah. It was more than 600 million. Even one bank was had taken 1.2 billion. So I am saying that in the light of all that, any government worth a salt, or any Bank of Ghana leadership worth a salt, would have taken a drastic decision in order to achieve results. What happened? If you have those situations, you have to take into consideration the interests of the depositors and those of the directors. And the Bank of Ghana at that time came to that conclusion that the interest of the depositor is paramount, because we have seen God is Love and DKM and all those things actually dissipate people's money. And therefore, they came to that conclusion using the law. So if after that, somebody, went around to opposition and then want to come back and say that, oh, media, when I come back, I will restore all these banks. If you use the law...
Kwame Pianim is not in opposition.
No, but you see, Kwame Pianim condemned what John Dramani Mahama said. Yes, he condemned it. No, he condemned it, on certain terms. So if today I am saying, if today those banks that went defunct, if they qualify and can meet the standard and requirement of the Bank of Ghana, I don't think that anybody prevent them.
Okay.
So it is not as if you just vetoed it. That when I come, I will bring them back. We don't do that. That is recklessness.
All right. Professor John Gachi, your last 2 minutes on this subject. I know that this issue won't go away. We'll bring it back again.
Yes, I just want to reiterate the point that prosecution of some directors ongoing is not a guarantee for the collapse of the banks. It's not a guarantee for the revocation of the licenses. The two must be separate. The two must be separate. So that is my last comment I want to make.
Okay. They are not coterminous at all. Two different actions.
But Roland,
now let's move on.
Is it not curious that
let's move on to
my friend here says that supporting a collapsing quote-unquote bank, right, was problematic. Meanwhile, the Bank of Ghana decided to support this reckless Akufo-Addo administration with billions of Ghana cedis. I'm just giving. If it is not prudent, but in one breath, you are doing it for government. Is it not curious?
Okay,
I am telling you, based on the law, different standards were taken. And then the law, the law says that when in such a situation, do ABC.
Issued a statement making some what others would describe as wild allegations. What do you make of it?
It's not wild.
About Asin Central and that the MPP is trying to, for which the EC has even responded this morning.
The EC didn't respond to Sami Gyamfi.
What did they respond to?
Jane Mensah set a question for herself.
They made a general statement about
She set a
who
question.
qualifies.
She set a question for herself and proceeded to answer it. She might be a very bad student, but you see, that's it. What is Sami?
No, but it's just some fake.
No, when a lecturer sets a question, right, and you don't respond, but you decide to respond to something else. What was the claim by Sami Gyamfi? Let's situate the conversation.
So you are proud of what Sami Gyamfi wrote?
Wait, calm
are you
down.
proud of
Please,
what
what did Sami Gyamfi say?
So Sami Gyamfi's claim is simple. As the National Communication Officer of the party, he had put out there that the NDC had become aware of a plot by the EC together with the MPP to do what? To cause the transfer of votes.
Vote?
The transfer of the voter registration of a candidate in the MPP primaries by name Charles Opoku. Charles Opoku has this voter registration number in Takwa and Swayem constituency.
So it's a registered voter.
Please. In Takwa and Swayem constituency. This young man had put himself up for the MPP primaries. And Sami Gyamfi is saying that per CI 127, a law made under the hand of Madame, what's her name, Jane Mensah. What is the law? Sections 22 of CI 127. Just for the record, let me just read. A registered voter who, before an election, is resident for not less than 12 months in a constituency other than that in which the registered voter is registered. Listen, may apply to the returning officer of the constituency where the registered voter is resident for the name of the registered voter to be entered onto a transfer list of polling station in that constituency. Right? Now the law further says that you can do that 42 days before the election. As we speak, the Electoral Commission had put out a notice out there. Which notice is that there is going to be a by-election on which day? 27th.
So your point is what?
Our point is this. By reason of this CI 127, Regulation 22, that transfer cannot happen within the 42 days period.
Is it that there's been an application for that transfer?
In fact, there's none. But you see, because now the gentleman...
So how did you draw that conclusion that the gentleman's name
so
could appear in
no,
the...
because you see, he had put his name up for the MPP primaries. And you see, Roland...
But he's not...
Registered, he's in Takwa.
So
He's in Takwa. And you see, the thing is that the man, quote unquote, is a stranger.
No, but it's a big issue. Why are you saying so?
oh, you
Hold on. The man is a foreigner.
You call
As far as Asin is concerned, Asin North is concerned. The reason is this.
So what evidence do you provide for making these allegations?
No, we have his voter's ID and all the details. We have extracted it. You see, before every election, the Electoral Commission gives you what we call it, the voters register. You know, during the registration.
Yeah, sure.
All the polling agents week. So we have that of his polling station in Takwa. And so you see, Electoral Commission in their statement, cleverly, they didn't respond to that. They now go to Article 94. Where in Sami Gyamfi's statement did he raise Article 94 concern?
Well, they only tell you that if somebody doesn't qualify, the person will not be...
No, that is why I'm saying that she's a bad student. Do you know why? Because, look, the Electoral Commission is the nomination form on their own issue. If you go to that nomination form, it says that you need somebody to propose you for the parliamentary election. You know that. And the person proposing you must indicate that you are from that constituency, registered voter there. Saka, as we speak, Charles Opoku, is he a registered voter in Asin North? No. But even more curious is that you are asking some people to vote for you in Asin North, but you can't vote for even yourself in that election.
Why can't he vote?
If you are not a registered voter in Asin North.
How did you get to determine that he's not a registered voter?
No, because we have extracted all. But you see, even more curious.
What if he did it 42 days before that?
Roland, briefly. I know Charles Opoku very well. Charles Opoku even wanted to be the NDC parliamentary aspirant. Immediately, J.G. Kwesi had this problem. He reached out. that he wanted to be our candidate.
And you think from that time he wouldn't have transferred his vote?
No, because we indicated that we are standing by Gyekye Quayson. So he quickly flipped on.
So you know the said gentleman?
I know him pretty well.
All right,
he works in Takwa.
Okay.
So he's never been a registered voter.
He told you that he's never been.
He's never been. 2020, the last voters register was compiled.
But then from 2020, you can still have your name.
But you see, in response, Jane Mensah now proceeds to say that, the gentleman per Article 94 is deemed qualified. The electoral laws of this country, it's not only about Article 94.
Says that if you qualify. So the secretariat has been set in that statement.
So in Article 94,
all right.
So you notice that the Sami statement has nothing to do with Article 94. We have raised the legitimate point that your own CI 127, made by you, Jane Mensah yourself, provides in Regulation 22 that a person can cause a transfer to be done 42 days prior to the next election. In this particular case, the election is on 27th. The 42 days requirement, you can meet it.
Okay.
So in that sense, the person is a foreigner.
You think these are wild allegations?
Sure. No, first he must deny whether or not he's not from Takwa.
It's not in his place. It's not his place. It is not in Saka's place.
I read Sami Gyemfi's press release, or whatever we call it. I was scandalized. And I'm more scandalized today. Edwidge Temeklo, a lawyer, sitting here and telling us that, electoral law is not about constitution.
No, I said not only the electoral law.
Yeah, but you
the
know.
Constitution,
So it includes constitution
and the regulations.
Very good.
So
but I say that when there is a conflict,
who said there's a conflict?
I'm coming. First of all, you are here telling us that, what Sami Gyemfi vote has nothing to do with Article 94. Article 94 talk about qualification.
You read the statement.
Article 9, I read the statement.
Where did he talk about?
Listen.
No, I thought
no.
So I will explain to you. I will explain to you.
Okay.
Article 94 talks about a qualification. And Sami Gyemfi is saying that.
What's the qualification?
If you read Article 94.
You are having a constitution.
Yeah, Article 94 says, subject to the provision of this article, a person shall not be qualified to be a member of parliament unless he is a citizen of Ghana, has attained the age of 21 years, and is registered voter, and all that.
Registered voter
and is registered voter.
I understand.
Yes.
But when we drill down to the specific...
Listen.
When we drill down to the specific CI that is used or that guides a particular election or this election for that matter, you should, for want of you willing to become a member of parliament and contesting thereof, be from that area, be registered, right? Be registered from that area.
You see, we are talking about constitution.
I know. It takes precedence. That's what you want to
wait.
say.
You see, we are talking about constitution. He is a lawyer. You know that when we are talking about canon of linguistics, the constitution is special. It says that expressios.
Look at you.
No, let me tell you. Expressio junis exclusive uterus.
Oh, Masha.
That you see, if the constitution. Come on. Let me. I mean, you know it. You see, it says that. You see, if the constitution wanted the area where he's going to stand, if the constitution wanted to add it, they would have added it. So, Tills mentioned, take precedent over those that not mentioned. Those that not mentioned, it is assumed that the intention of the framers of the Constitution don't want them there. So it is not for any reason that the Constitution says that you must be a registered voter. A registered voter, not a registered voter in the constituency. So anybody, anywhere, because that is what the Constitution says. Once you are a registered voter, you qualify. Secondly, Sami Gyemfi is telling us that as if this is the first time, because the Electoral Commission has used this method severally.
Which method?
They use the statutory declaration, because he is talking about the time period for the transfer or whatever to happen, and using the CI 127. The Electoral Commission just used statutory declaration because the Constitution cannot be violated just because of the Electoral Commission CI. You know that. That is the reason why I'm saying that. You see, no, you see, that
He's
is
responding.
That is the reason why.
This is time, please.
Listen.
Please.
That's the reason why I said that.
Odigi,
The Article
please, this is
19 has everything to do with what. Article 194 has everything to do with what Sammy Gyamfi wrote, because it has to do with qualifications of a parliamentary candidate, and in that, if you go and say that because there is no time, 42 days, and then there is no time, you end up disqualifying him.
That is the law.
No, but I am saying that if that is the law, and then the Constitution says that the person qualifies, there has to be a way in order for him to contest. That's the point we are making. So don't come and sit here and say that.
But he has to meet all criteria.
Yes, no. But you see, he has to meet. Wait. Please. No, it will help me.
No, if you look at regulation.
Please, let's look at the EC's statement.
22 for
EC statement. Please put the EC statement there. Let's go through
look
quickly.
at regulation 22.
Now,
so we'll tie it in
of
with
127, of CI 127.
Let's look at what it
No,
says.
please wait. Let me read this. Then you'll come to this.
Okay.
We thank God.
No, sure, I agree. No,
God is wonderful. God is wonderful. All right. So we have this, and this is a direct response. It's a direct response by the Electoral Commission. And it says the MPP and the Electoral Commission in a plot to illegally insert the name of an unqualified MPP parliamentary candidate into the Asin North voters register. Contrary to what Edwin Tamaklo is saying here, this is a direct response. Now the EC says its attention has been drawn to that. And they wish to state that this is not true. For the record, the EC has not received any such request from the MPP to transfer the vote of any person. Now, if you move up, this, however, do indicate that per Article 94 of the 1992 Constitution, a person does not need to be registered, to be a registered voter in a particular constituency to enable him or her contest the election in that constituency. Per the Constitution, they continue, simply hailing from a constituency entitles a person to contest the election in that constituency so long as the person is a Ghanaian, 21 years and above, of sound mind, and a registered voter. In that event, where a person who wishes to contest in a particular constituency does not hail from that constituency, that person will be eligible to contest if he or she is ordinarily resident in that constituency or has been a resident there for a total period of not less than 5 years out of the 10 years immediately preceding the election for which he or she stands. All right. So I think this concisely explains and also responds directly to Sammy Gyamfi, who is a communication officer of the NDC. What do you say, Edwige?
So read what the EC decided to ignore. It says in sub-regulation...
What are you reading?
Yeah, I mean, public elections... Oh, hold on. Public Elections Regulation 2020.
You want to compare that one to the
CI
Constitution?
127. This is what it says in sub-regulation 4. It says, an application under sub-regulation 1 shall be set out in the Form 3 of the schedule and shall be made not less than 42 days before the last day of nomination to the constituency where the applicant resides and where the application relates to a nomination.
So,
yes, 22.
This one,
so
you see, Article 94 provides a broad law. This one is specific to the organization of parliamentary election. If you read Article 94, for instance, it has no provision on making statutory declaration, correct? But you cannot be an MP if you don't do that statutory declaration because it's a requirement of CI 127. The point I'm making to you is that you don't read law in isolation. You read all the laws. And for parliamentary election in Ghana, there are 3 important legislation. The Constitution itself, Representation of the People's Act, PNDC Law 284, and the Public Election Regulation 2020, CI 127. You cannot read 94 in isolation and now conveniently say that, yes, you see there is a problem, but the Constitution should have, precedence over others. Regrettably today, my brother says by way of education, in applying the expressio unis rule, right? That the express, delineation of a particular word from a text means that the framer intended it so. Correct?
Yes.
Meanwhile, conveniently, our friends in Article 94(2)(a associate allegiance to citizenship. Is it not curious? Is it not curious? Because if the framers, hold on, if the framers,
we're not debating.
If the framers of the 1992 Constitution intended.
But let me avert your mind too.
Yes, go ahead.
This section 22 of this constitutional instrument 127 does not in any way relate to you contesting elections. It only says if you have to be a registered voter in a particular area.
So you are saying that Article 94 does not have a provision of being a registered voter?
It does.
You want people to vote for you, but you can't vote for yourself in that constituency. Is that your reasoning? A foreigner? At this point, technically, as far as the election of Asinoff is concerned, he is deemed a foreigner because he can't even vote for himself. If, assuming he becomes the MPP candidate for the by-election, it means that on the day of the election, his name will still be on the register in Takwa in Swahili. How is he going to vote on 27th? Saka, how is he going to vote on 27th?
The fact of the matter is that if somebody hails from an area,
does it mean automatic transfer of his vote?
If you hail from the area,
is it an automatic transfer?
For instance,
it cannot be.
And the Constitution does not state that you need to be a registered voter of that constituency.
No, so on the day of election,
if I hail from an area,
according to this, and then also making reference to 22 of CI,
he can't vote for himself.
Yeah, but it's
when I hail from the area,
it's very material.
It's not material to you becoming a member of parliament.
You are going there asking the people of Asinoff, Montomane.
It doesn't matter.
Montomane.
If you make reference to the CI.
So at this point, what is clear?
I'm saying that if you make reference to the CI, you make reference to Article 94.
You have to read it together. At this point, that man had become a foreigner.
No.
He's a
if I hail from an area, I can never, whether or not I vote there,
you mean he's a foreigner to the voters registration list? But it doesn't debar him from contesting.
It's the constitution.
The point is
about the constitution.
Edwin Tamaklo, legal practitioner. Are you going to call this morning?
Yes. On election,
thank you very much, Edwin Tamaklo. Sakasalia. Thank you very much. Please. I want to make this announcement, please. Felix Avavo, you live in Ho. Good morning to you. Eko Krenzel, my good brother of Ejumaku in the Central Region. Good morning to you as well. And then, please. So they said I should ask you, and this from Chumesi Ankara, legal practice. Say, per the EC's letter is a commission admitting that CI, which it represented to Parliament, containing such a clause is unconstitutional.
No, unconstitutional. There's a clash between that CI
There's
and
no
the
clash.
All right. Prince Henry Kofodria, good morning to you, and thank you for the messages.
It's not.
Now there are critical issues, and I want to say good morning to a number of people who have been quite good to many of us for all the things that we do. Now, Lawrence Feli, you work with Ghana Water. You say that you're an ardent watcher of the show. Godwin Ankra from Wager, good morning to you, alongside Faustina Ankra, and then Noble at the DIA of the Keta Secondary School. You're an accountant in the school. Good morning to you as well. And then for many of you joining us on Facebook, let me just get some of your names. Alfred Dodu, you say you are shifting camp. Please make sure you join us. Kingston Bisaba Semega, and then we have Benin Joaquin. Thank you for all your messages as well. We're taking a break. We told you that we have the first evictees of our reality show, Perfect Match Extra, coming on the show. And AJ is going to have some great conversations with them. We also have the latest sports headlines. Make sure you stick and stay right here with TV3 New Day. We're taking a break. We'll be right back.